Howdy, D&T gamers. Today I've got something a bit more bite-sized for you. A while ago, I used to open up my streams with What's the Plays. I'd show a screenshot of an interesting decision point that I'd encountered recently, and we would talk through it. In an effort to have some videos here that are shorter and more digestible than my 5+ hour stream VODs, I'm adapting that to YouTube. Please let me know in the comments what you think of it. In particular, if you're interested in me looking at your What's the Plays, let me know. I could think of setting up some kind of submission box for that kind of thing. Without further ado, here we go. We're at turn 2 on the play against the Flooded Strand. We're resolving a Thoughtseize that I just drew for the turn. Our opponent shows us 2 fetch lands, Baleful Strix, Snuff Out, Orcish Bowmasters, Force of Will, and Brazen Borrower. Which card are we supposed to take with this Thoughtseize? Before I go through my thought process here, I encourage you to pause the video and come up with your choice. In a few moments, I'll give you my answer. All right, so from the revealed cards, we know our opponent is very likely on a slightly slower build of Dimir Tempo. Probably no Nethergoyfs, potentially a Hymn to Torok or two. Our hand looks good for that matchup. We have 2 solid pieces of removal, we have a Stoneforge Mystic to get a little bit proactive, and we opened on 2 basic lands, so we're pretty insulated from Wasteland, at least for the near future. Our opponent's hand is also pretty robust. Minus the lack of a real threat, there's no obvious weakness in this hand that I can exploit. So we've got a little bit of work to do to determine which card that we want to take. In my mind, Orcish Bowmasters and Brazen Borrower are by far the least worrying cards in this hand. Bowmasters doesn't kill anything, the clock has no support, and Borrower is similarly dependent on other cards, kind of putting in the heavy lifting before it seals the deal by bouncing a blocker, turning into an additional flyer, that kind of thing. So that leaves Baleful Strix, Snuff Out, and Force of Will as my real contenders for the card I want to pick here. To get one step closer to the answer, I start thinking about my plan for the next turn, which is almost certainly going to be playing the Wasteland to play around a top deck Daze, and casting the Stoneforge Mystic to get a pre-war Formalware. In that vein, I decided to isolate Snuff Out and Force of Will and compare them through the lens of potential answers to Stoneforge. If I take Snuff Out and I let my opponent Force of Will my Stoneforge, I've essentially also taken the Borrower with the Thoughtseize as well, which is convenient. They could exile the Baleful Strix, but I think that's pretty unlikely for reasons that we'll get to later. But if I let them use a counter spell instead of a removal spell, then we don't get the actual Stoneforge ETB, which means I don't get a Formalware in my hand, which also would essentially negate my opponent's Snuff Out anyway. And again, since the Borrower isn't that important here, I'm hesitant to really value the additional cards worth of value we get out of making the opponent use Force of Will. For those reasons, if I'm going to take Force of Will or Snuff Out, then I think I'm more likely to take Force of Will here. Taking Force also solves the potential complication where my opponent top decks a threat and decides to let my Stoneforge resolve so that they can protect their threat with the Force of Will. My hand can't handle that situation all that well right now unless I draw another white source to cast the Skyclave Apparition. So we're down to Baleful Strix and Force of Will as the real contenders. We've talked about Force of Will enough, so let's address Baleful Strix. There are 2 aspects of Baleful Strix that worry me a bit. The first is the obvious. It replaces itself, and that's pretty important in general, and especially in the context of this hand where our opponent really needs something else to kind of get their game plan going. They need a real threat, whether it's a Murktide or a Barrowgoyf or what have you. But when I also zoom out and consider the macro view of this matchup, there is a particular card that stands out loud and clear, and that's Kaito. Kaito Bane of Nightmares is the most important threat for them, and it's not really close. Blue-black in this matchup really can't expect to win by just playing creatures and dealing damage. That just doesn't line up well against our removal density, and particularly our ability to chump block stuff like Barrowgoyf. Kaito and Tamiyo are miles above every other threat in their deck, and Kaito stands out in particular because of how difficult he is to deal with once he enters play. So I see this Strix not only as a way to draw into potential other threats that I'm going to have to deal with, but also as a really effective enabler for Kaito's ninjutsu. I don't really want to spend a card on answering this Baleful Strix, particularly none of the cards that I have in my hand right now, which means it's going to be sticking around for a while. It's going to make me essentially afraid of Kaito even more than I am for the entire time that this Baleful Strix is in play. And I see all of that really as much more concerning than the threat of my Stoneforge gets countered and I don't get an equipment. So for that reason, I decided to take Baleful Strix. Do you disagree? Do you want to take a different card? Did you also decide on Strix, but you got there in a different way? Whatever it might be, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you all thought about this situation. And I hope you liked this. I'd love to turn this into a series if the demand is there. So please, also in the comments, let me know if you enjoyed it. And thank you as always for watching and for supporting me and all the stuff that I do. If you don't already catch me live on Twitch Sundays at 11 a.m. for the Magic Online challenges, please do so. I love how many people are hanging out there. It's a great time. When I'm not able to make the Sunday challenges, I've started doing some weeknight league streams, getting back to my roots. If you want to stay up to date on when the streams are happening, please follow me on Blue Sky. You can also join my Patreon to get access to my subscriber Discord server, where I chat with my fans and share lists ahead of events, as well as get access to my maintained sideboard guide as well. Thank you again, and I'll catch you in the next video.